It was a very, very early time in the morning. The clock on the wall showed that it was exactly 2:14 a.m. Most people in the world were fast asleep in their warm beds, dreaming of happy things. But at Windsor Castle, something big was happening. A very important key called the master key was being used. It turned slowly in the lock of a big, heavy door. This was not a normal thing to happen at this time of night. Usually, everything is locked up tight and very quiet. There was no loud alarm that went off to tell the guards that someone was moving around. There were no sounds of heavy boots walking on the floor. The long, grand hallway of Windsor Castle was very dark. It looked like a big, black tunnel that went on and on into the shadows. It was so dark that you could not even see your own hands in front of your face. But inside a special room called the Hall of Matriarchs, there was one person. It was a man named Gideon Thorne. He was breathing very slowly and very carefully. He was taking deep breaths one after another. Gideon was a man who had worked for the royal family for 30 long years. That is a very long time to have a job. Because he had been there so long, he knew exactly where everything was. He knew every secret door and every hidden corner of the palace. But tonight was different. Tonight, he was doing something that was very, very brave. He knew that he was taking a very big risk. If he got caught, he could get in big trouble. But he decided that this was the right thing to do. His hands were very steady. They did not shake or wiggle at all. This was the very first thing that Princess Anne noticed about him as she watched him work in the dark. Princess Anne has spent her whole entire life around men who get very nervous. She has seen many men who get scared when things do not go exactly the way the rules say they should. She has seen men get sweaty and shaky the moment they have to do something different. But Gideon was not like those other men. His hands were as still as a rock. They were perfectly calm. He took the master key and pushed it slowly into the second lock. He did it with so much care. Princess Anne chose him to help her for this very reason. She knew that he was a man who stayed calm when things were scary. In a big palace like Windsor, it is very hard to find someone who can stay that steady under pressure. Everyone there usually likes to follow the old rules and stay safe. But tonight, they were not staying safe. Tonight, being brave was the most important thing in the whole wide world. They were about to do something that would change history, and they needed to be very, very careful not to make a single mistake. On the floor, there was a big wooden box called a crate. It was sitting on a trolley that had soft padding on it so it would not make noise when it moved. The box was about 6 feet away from the wall. This big box had arrived at the palace only 3 hours ago. It was late at night when it came. It was labeled with a special number that made it look like it was just a boring piece of old inventory. If anyone looked at the record book in the morning, they would think it was just a regular box of old things being fixed. They would not think it was anything special at all. The box was wrapped in a special kind of paper that keeps things safe from damage. The paper was still perfect and had no holes in it. Underneath all that paper was a beautiful frame made of shiny gold. This frame was very old and very pretty. But the painting inside the frame had not been seen in the light for over 25 years. It had been hidden away in a dark, lonely place for a quarter of a century. It was like a secret that had been buried deep in the ground, waiting for someone to find it again. Princess Anne did not look at the big wooden box right away. Instead, she stood very still and looked at the wall. She was thinking about what was going to happen in this hallway. She knew that what they were doing was very big. Before the story goes any further, I want to ask you a question. Please leave a comment and tell me what you think. Do you think that putting this painting back on the wall is an act of justice, which means doing the right thing? Or do you think it is like starting a war between the people in the palace? Your opinion is very important. Also, please do not forget to hit that big red subscribe button right now. If you subscribe, you will be able to see all of our new stories as soon as they come out. We have so many more secrets to tell you, and you do not want to miss any of them. Thank you for being such a great viewer and for helping us tell these important stories. The Hall of Matriarchs is a room that almost nobody ever gets to visit. It is not a place where tourists go to take pictures. It is hidden away behind 3 different hallways that are always kept locked. This room is in the private part of Windsor Castle where the royal family actually lives their lives. It is very far away from the official paths and the places where people go for tour. The pictures on the walls in this room are not just there to look nice. They are very important declarations. A declaration is like a big, strong statement. Every woman who has a painting in this room earned her place there. They earned it through their family blood, by giving up things they loved, and by working hard to keep the institution of the monarchy strong forever and ever. To have your picture hanging on this wall means that you are considered untouchable. It means you are one of the most important women in history. But if a picture is taken down from this wall, it is a very big deal. It is like saying that person is not important anymore. It is a way of trying to make people forget who they were. Gideon put on his special gloves to keep the painting clean. He slowly started to lift the first layer of the wrapping paper. He moved very, very slowly. The paper fell away from the frame in one long, smooth motion. It looked like a scene from a movie where everything happens in slow motion. As the paper fell to the dusty floor, a small light from the wall hit the edge of the gold frame. It sparkled and shined in the dark hallway. Then the most amazing thing happened. The sapphire blue eyes in the painting appeared. They were bright and beautiful. Princess Anne stopped moving completely. She became as still as a statue. She had seen this painting hundreds of times before in her life. She was actually there when the artist first painted it many years ago. She remembered the exact afternoon when the painting was finished. She remembered how the room felt that day. She remembered how the painter took a step back to look at what he had made. She remembered how everyone in the room stopped talking because they knew they were looking at something very special. They knew this painting would last much longer than any of them would. But seeing the painting now felt very different for Princess Anne. It had been gone for 25 years. People had moved it away on purpose because they did not want people to see it. For over 2 decades, the painting was only mentioned in small notes at the bottom of pages. It was kept in a storage room like it was just a boring piece of office paper that nobody cared about. Seeing it now, right in front of her eyes, felt like a door was being forced open. It was a door that someone had spent many years trying to keep locked shut. Anne took a slow breath in through her nose. She spoke in a very, very tiny voice. "Carefully," she whispered. She did not need to shout. The hallway was so quiet that even a whisper sounded loud. Gideon and his 2 helpers moved toward the painting. They were very precise. That means they were very, very careful and did everything exactly right. They lifted the portrait like it was the most fragile thing in the world. They knew that if it broke, it could never, ever be replaced. It was a one-of-a-kind treasure. The team moved the painting toward the wall. The metal brackets that hold the painting had been put there 4 days ago. A worker had come in to do the job, but his papers said he was just doing routine maintenance. That means he was just fixing the wall to keep it strong. Nobody asked him why he was doing it. In a palace as big as Windsor, there are always people fixing things. The workers are almost invisible because people are used to seeing them. The painting was lifted up high. It found its spot on the wall and clicked into place perfectly. Princess Anne took 3 steps back so she could see it better. She looked at what they had just done. There she was. Diana, the Princess of Wales, was finally hanging in the Hall of Matriarchs. She was placed right next to the late Queen Elizabeth. This was exactly where the palace experts said she should be. It had taken 18 months of quiet legal work to make sure this was allowed. This was the only spot that carried the full weight of the institution. The room was totally silent. There were no cameras flashing. There were no reporters there to ask questions. No one had written a news story about this yet. There was no plan to tell the public in the morning. This whole operation was a secret. It did not show up on any official schedule. The only place it existed was in the legal papers that Gideon would file before the sun came up. These papers used special rules that made this move permanent. Permanent means it can never be changed back. It is forever. Princess Anne turned toward the door. She did not make a big speech. She just pulled her coat tight around her body. Her face looked very serious and did not change. "Lock up," she said in a quiet voice. And then she walked away into the darkness. She was gone, leaving the painting behind in the quiet hall. No one in that hallway knew what was going to happen next. The woman who was sleeping in the east wing of the palace had no idea at all. She was dreaming, and she did not know that something big had changed. This was not the end of the story. It was actually just the beginning. It was the first move in a big reckoning that had been coming for 20 years. A reckoning is when people finally have to face the truth about what happened in the past. By the time the sun started to rise over the towers of Windsor Castle, nothing inside those walls would ever be the same again. The paper that had been wrapped around the painting was lying on the floor. It was 2:31 in the morning. People say that the painting looked like it was breathing. That is a strange thing to say about a painting, but it felt alive. The moment the last piece of paper fell away and the light hit the canvas, the air in the room seemed to shift. It felt like the air changes when you open a window in a dusty room that has been closed for a long, long time. Gideon could feel the change in the air. He had touched thousands of old things in the palace over his 30 years of work, but he had never felt anything like this. He kept his hands moving and did his job. He kept his face very plain so no one could tell what he was thinking, but his chest felt very tight. It was not because the painting was heavy. It was because of how important this moment was. The painting was very big. It was 4 feet wide and 5 feet tall. The background was a very dark blue color. It looked like the sky late at night when the stars are just about to come out. In the painting, Diana was standing with her shoulders relaxed. She had a very special look on her face. It was a look of stillness. Photographers had tried to catch that look for many years, but they almost never could, but the painter had caught it perfectly. In the painting, Diana was wearing her beautiful sapphire earrings. Her jaw was tilted just a little bit. But the most important part of the whole painting was her eyes. They were very clear and they looked right at you. They showed a kind of warmth that was real. It was not a fake smile for a camera. It was a warmth that just existed all on its own. This beautiful painting had been buried in a cold storage room for more than 25 years. It was not lost, and nobody had forgotten about it by accident. It was put there on purpose. People had deliberately taken it away so that it would not be seen. They took it off the list of active paintings and put it on the list of archived things. They wrapped it up, sealed it tight, and pushed it into a dark corner where no one would find it. For 20 years, the palace had been trying to tell a new version of history. In this new version of history, there was not much room for the woman in the painting. And for 25 years, their plan actually worked. The charities that Diana loved were slowly given to other people to look after. The groups she helped were given new names. Her beautiful jewelry was locked up in big safes. People used special numbers to list the jewelry so that no one would know it belonged to her. When the palace staff wrote letters or decided where people should sit at dinner parties, they made sure she was not included. They practiced a very specific kind of forgetting. They were not loud about it because they did not want people to get angry or start a protest. They just did it a little bit at a time, year after year. They wanted her absence to feel like it was just the natural way of things. They wanted people to get used to her being gone. A whole generation of people who watched the royal family grew up during this time of forgetting. Younger people who learned about the king and queen through the internet only saw Diana as a small part of history. They thought she was important, and they knew her story was sad, but they thought she was in the past. They thought her story was over and filed away. Gideon and his team carried the big painting to the spot on the north wall. They did not say a word to each other. They moved in total silence. Princess Anne stood 4 feet away and watched them. She was very focused. She had probably imagined this moment in her head many times over the years, but she would never tell anyone that. The metal parts on the wall grabbed the frame with a soft, clean clicking sound. Gideon stepped back. His team stepped back too. For a moment, all of them just stood there with Princess Anne. They all looked at the painting of Diana hanging on the wall. Now Diana was hanging right next to Queen Elizabeth. Both women took up the same amount of space on the most important wall in the private part of Windsor Castle. Princess Anne's jaw got tight for a second, and then she let it go. She had not allowed herself to feel any emotions until this very moment. For 18 months, she had been working very hard on the legal side of this plan. She had talked to experts on the Constitution and looked at many old documents. She had built every part of the plan with a very cold and sharp mind. People say she is very tough, and she was being tough during those months. She did not cry and she did not tell anyone how she felt. She just worked. But now, standing there at 2:38 in the morning with no audience and no cameras, she let herself look at the painting. She looked at it for just 4 seconds longer than she needed to. Then she turned away and told Gideon what to do in the morning. The painting was finally home. It was legally safe and could not be moved. There were many people who did not know what was happening. The people who talked to the news for the palace did not know. The king's top secretary did not know, and the woman sleeping in the east wing did not know either. She would walk past this very hallway in about 6 hours. She had no idea that she was about to walk into a big surprise. She had spent 20 years believing that she had won. She thought she had successfully moved the past away, but she was about to see proof that she was wrong. That moment was coming closer every minute, and the painting would be right there waiting for her when she arrived. The first thing Camilla did after she got engaged was ask about the jewelry. She did not ask this in public where people could hear her. She did not say it in a news interview or a statement. She asked it very privately, using secret ways that people inside the palace use when they do not want to put things in writing. A quiet message was passed from one helper to another helper. It went all the way to the office that looks after the royal collection of treasures. The question was asked in a way that made it sound like it was just a simple logistics question. She wanted to know which pieces of jewelry would be available for her to wear at big events. She wanted to know which famous items were being used right now. On paper, it seemed like a normal question to ask. But inside the palace walls, questions about jewelry are never just about the jewelry. They are about power and who is important. The beautiful sapphire and diamond engagement ring was already gone. Prince William had given it to Catherine before anyone could even ask for it. That was a decision he made very quickly. But there were many other pieces of jewelry. There was a famous tiara and some special diamonds. There were earrings and bracelets that Diana had worn in many famous photographs. Those pieces of jewelry were still in the inventory. That means they were still technically there to be used. But within 14 months of the wedding, the rules about who could wear them were changed very quietly. The famous tiara stayed available for Catherine, which was a way to make the change look official and fair. But the other pieces, the ones that belonged to Diana's family, were moved. They were put under a conservation review. That is a fancy way of saying they needed to be kept safe because they were old and fragile. A group of people signed a paper saying the jewelry should not be shown in public very much. The people in that group changed a few times in 1 year. Nobody told the public about any of this. That was the whole plan. They wanted it to be a secret. The charities followed a similar path. Diana had 23 charities when she died. These were groups that helped sick people and children. Over 7 years, 17 of those charities were given to new people. These changes happened one at a time. Each one was done in its own separate way. Each one had its own announcement. No announcement mentioned any of the other changes. There was no big list that showed all of them together. This was not a mistake. It was a carefully built plan. The painting was the last part. Or really, it was in the middle, which is why nobody noticed it for a long time. The Hall of Matriarchs was looked at as part of a big project to fix up the palace. The report said that some paintings should be moved to a storage room to keep them in good condition. Diana's official painting was on that list. The papers were signed. The painting was taken down. It was wrapped up and moved to a cold room with no ceremony at all. No one told the public because the private part of the palace is private. They said that what hangs on those walls is an internal matter. This is how the palace framed the situation. For over 20 years, this story stayed the same because no one had the power or the desire to fight it. The palace runs on something called deference. Deference means you follow the people who are in charge, and you follow the rules that were made before you. To fight even one small part of the system, you would have to fight the whole thing. And the system was built to be very hard to change. But the system did not plan for a prince who was not interested in fighting or making big headlines. This prince did not want to have a loud argument in public. Instead, he sat down one afternoon with a very smart lawyer. He asked a very specific and very quiet question. He wanted to know exactly who had the legal power over one specific wall in one specific part of Windsor Castle. That one little question took him 18 months to answer. It took a lot of patience. Most people in the palace thought he did not have that kind of patience, but they were wrong. He was very disciplined. He watched the palace work around him, and he did not show anyone that he had already found a secret door in the rules. And now, while the woman who built those rules is sleeping, that door is wide open. The painting is on the wall. The papers are filed. The legal move cannot be changed. The only thing left to wait for is the morning. Prince William is reading the same rule for the 11th time. It is 7:42 on a Tuesday morning. This time, he feels like everything is shifting. The document in his hands is 43 pages long. It is full of very hard legal language and extra reports. William has been reading papers like this for 4 years now. He has been reading them in secret. He did not want to leave any clues that he was looking into the rules of the palace. He does everything that matters to him this way. He does it alone, he does it early, and he stays very focused. Some people thought he was just being quiet, but he was actually studying. The rule on page 31 is about the royal trustee. This rule has been around since 1887. It was changed twice, once in 1923 and once in 1971. Both times, the changes added more words instead of taking them away. This means the original rule is still very much alive. It is a legal power that is totally separate from the king's office. William put the papers down on his desk. He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the palace grounds were very quiet. The morning light was just starting to show. He watched a worker walk across the lawn. Then he picked up his phone and made a very important call. The call lasted for 9 minutes. William only talked for about 90 seconds of that time. For the rest of the call, he just listened. He asked 3 very smart questions. His voice sounded very calm and flat. He was confirming things he already knew. When the call was over, he stood in the same spot for 20 seconds. He was looking at nothing in particular. Then he opened his calendar and set up a meeting with Princess Anne for next Thursday. He did not write down why they were meeting. He did not need to. Princess Anne had been watching the palace rules for her whole life. She was waiting for this moment. She was waiting for someone with the right legal power and the right motivation to use the rules instead of fighting them. William was that person. He had been planning this for a very long time. The years before this moment looked like he was just adjusting to royal life. People thought he was just learning how to be a prince. He went to meetings and helped with charities. He smiled for the cameras and stood in the right spots. The palace thought he was just following the rules and being a good boy. But he was not just following them. He was studying them. He was mapping the palace like a builder maps a house. He wanted to know exactly where the strong parts were and where the weak parts were. He wanted to know where he could push to make a big change without making a big noise. He was not angry. Anger is loud and makes people get ready to defend themselves. He was precise. That means he was very, very careful and exact. His meeting with Princess Anne lasted 40 minutes longer than it was supposed to. They were all alone in a private room. There were no helpers there and no one was recording their voices. What they said in that room was a secret. But 3 weeks later, a special legal paper was filed. It was 17 pages long. It was sent through the right office and signed by the right people. It used the secret rule from page 31 that nobody else had thought to look at. By the time anyone in the palace's news office reads it, it will already be finished. The move will already be scheduled. The woman who spent 20 years trying to hide Diana's memory will be away in the country. She will have no idea that the palace she built is about to change. The loophole is real. The power is confirmed. All William needs now is one very quiet night to finish the job. The rule on page 31 does not use the word power. It uses the word authority. There is a big difference between those two words. Power in the monarchy comes from being seen. It comes from the king saying yes. It goes through many different offices and secretaries. To use power, you have to move through the official channels. You leave a paper trail that people can see and try to stop. But authority is different. In the old rules from 1887, authority is structural. That means it belongs to the job, not the person. It does not need the king to say yes every time. This is because the rule was made over 100 years ago. The people who wrote the rule wanted some decisions to be protected. They didn't want a king to be able to change everything just because of a new marriage or a political problem. They built a door that goes around the throne. The writers of the rule built this door on purpose. They put it into the rules for the private part of Windsor Castle. This includes the Hall of Matriarchs. William's team of lawyers spent 11 months making sure this was true. The words were very clear once they found them, but they had to check every single change that had been made over the years. They found that both times the rules were changed, they actually made the authority stronger. And then there was the question of who had this special authority right now. William already knew the answer to that. Princess Anne has been the senior royal trustee for 19 years. She got this job because of her family, how long she has been there, and because everyone respects her. She does hundreds of meetings every year and never causes a scandal. She is the person that the whole institution is built around. William knew that King Charles would not challenge Princess Anne. It is not because the king doesn't have the power to try. It is because if he tried to stop her, he would have to explain it in public. He would have to explain why he was fighting a rule that is 100 years old. He would have to go against his own sister, who is very respected. He would have to fight a legal process that every lawyer would say was done correctly. Charles would not want to do that. William knew it, and Anne knew it too. The trap was not set for the Queen. The trap was set for the moment the Queen asked the king to fix it. The alliance between William and Anne had been growing for years. They didn't talk about it out loud, but they understood each other. They used small signals and eye contact at big events. Anne had watched what happened to Diana's memory with a very sharp eye. She knew exactly what was going on. She also knew that the best time to act was when the right person and the right legal rule came together. William was that person. Page 31 was that rule. It took 3 weeks to write the final papers. 2 very smart lawyers looked at them in secret. The papers were filed on a Wednesday morning. A regular clerk processed them. The clerk did not know that this was a big deal. It looked like just another routine piece of palace business. No one called the king's office to tell them. The painting was already being moved. And far away in the country, Queen Camilla was getting ready for a meeting. She had no idea that the meeting was scheduled specifically to keep her away from Windsor Castle that morning. By the time Camilla's car drives back into Windsor, the filing will have been done for 6 hours. The painting will have been on the wall for 4 hours. The time for anyone to stop it will have passed. This will happen at 8:03 in the morning while she is 40 miles away. She will be talking to a room full of people, and she will have no idea that her world has changed. The pen touched the paper at 11:47 on a Thursday night. At that moment, the monarchy changed forever. Princess Anne did not wait. She did not stop to read the paper one last time. She did not ask if it was a good idea. Many people were worried, but she was not. She just signed her name. Her signature is the same one she has used for 60 years. It is very neat and does not have any fancy parts. Fancy parts are for people who want to be noticed. Anne does not need that. William watched her sign the paper from across the table. His hands were flat on his knees. He looked very calm, but his heart was probably beating fast. He had been waiting for this for 20 years. The document between them was 17 pages long. The lawyer who wrote it was a man named Desmond. He had been a lawyer for 41 years and was very good at finding secrets. He said the document was airtight. That means it was so good that no one could find a way to break it. Every possible problem had been thought of and fixed before the paper was even written. The filing would be done quietly and no one would notice it until the painting was already on the wall. Anne put her pen down with a small click. She looked at William. They didn't need to say much. They just recognized each other. They both knew they had been carrying a heavy secret for a long time. They were finally in the same room and they had finally done the thing that needed to be done. "It goes to Desmond in the morning," Anne said. William just said, "Yes." That was their whole conversation. They didn't need to say more. What they didn't say out loud was how important this was. Diana's painting would hang in the Hall of Matriarchs. But the even bigger thing was that they proved the palace could not just erase the past. They showed that someone patient and smart could win against the people who tried to hide the truth. The Queen thought she had won by being patient, but William was even more patient. He found the one way to fix things that could not be stopped. 3 floors above them, a worker was finishing the Queen's schedule for the next few weeks. The worker did not know that the meeting in the country was a trick. It was suggested to the Queen's office by a person who was secretly helping William. The meeting was real, but the timing was planned perfectly. It was meant to keep the Queen away on the one morning when the papers were being processed. By the time the Queen gets back to the palace next Thursday, the painting will be on the wall. The legal window to stop it will be closed. The clerk will have stamped the paper at 8:03 a.m. William stood up and shook Anne's hand. He held it for 1 second and then let go. She walked to the door and did not look back. The trap was set. The papers were moving, and the woman in the East Wing was sleeping, not knowing that the most important wall in the palace was about to tell a brand new story. The car turned through the gates at 10:22 a.m. The painting had been on the wall for exactly 4 hours and 9 minutes. The Queen's meeting had run 12 minutes late because someone talked too long. Her helper was in the car looking at her computer. Everything seemed very normal. The morning was gray and quiet like many other English mornings. There was no sign that anything big had happened inside. The Queen got out of the car and walked toward her rooms. She was very relaxed. She turned the corner into the long hallway and then she just stopped. She did not slow down, she just stopped moving completely. It was like her body saw the painting before her brain could understand what it was. The painting was huge. The gold frame was very bright. The blue eyes of Diana were looking right at her. Diana looked very real in the painting. She did not look mean or happy, she just looked present. She was really there. For 3 seconds, the Queen did not move at all. Her helper walked into her from behind and almost fell over. Then the helper saw the painting and became very silent. The Queen's face changed. It didn't look shocked, it looked hard and angry. Her jaw was tight and her mouth was a thin line. Her hands turned into fists inside her coat. She stood there for 7 seconds. A maid saw her and quickly turned around to go the other way. Then the Queen turned to her helper. "Get me the King's secretary," she said. Her voice was very flat and level. She was trying very hard to stay in control. In the next 40 minutes, everything happened very fast. Doors were closed and people were talking in secret. The Queen reached the King's secretary in 6 minutes. The secretary reached the King in 9 minutes. The Queen and the King talked for 22 minutes. A worker outside the room said it was the loudest silence he had ever heard. The Queen wanted the painting taken down right away. She wanted it gone before lunch. She wanted to know who allowed this to happen. She was very upset that no one had told her it was coming. But the secretary had already looked at the papers. He had read them twice. He had called the lawyer's office, but no one answered. He talked to the palace's own lawyer, a woman named Dr. Adasu. She told him the news he did not want to hear. The lawyer said the papers were valid. That means they were legal and correct. The rules had been followed perfectly. There were no mistakes. The time to stop it had ended at 8:03 that morning. The secretary went into the room and told the Queen this. He did not give his own opinion, he just said what the law was. The Queen listened without saying a word. When he was done, she asked one simple question. "Where is Charles?" The secretary told her, and she walked there immediately. The painting of Diana watched her as she walked away. Charles was standing by the window when she came in. He did not turn around. He was looking at the grass with his hands behind his back. This is what he does when he is thinking very hard. He already knew about the painting and the legal papers. Charles knew that the document was airtight. He knew that if he tried to stop it, he would be overriding his own son and the legal rules of the palace. He would have to go against his own sister in front of everyone. He would have to sign his name to a paper saying he was against a 100-year-old law. He would have to do this just to take down a painting of his children's mother. He knew the news would find out and the public would be very angry. The palace might not survive a fight like that. William, his own son, would never forgive him. Charles looked at his wife. He had a look on his face that had been coming for a long time. It was not a mean look, but it was very clear. He had finally reached a point where he could not avoid the choice anymore. He said nothing. The silence lasted for 15 seconds. The silence was full of all the secrets and deals they had made over the last 20 years. None of it mattered now. The Queen lifted her chin and looked at him. He looked away first and looked back out the window. In their marriage, that was a very big signal. It meant the answer was no. He was not going to help her this time. She had lost his protection. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the door opened. Princess Anne walked in without knocking. She looked at the Queen with a very direct look. She was not scared at all. She had nothing left to hide. She opened her mouth and said 5 simple words. "It is what Diana deserved." Her voice was not loud, but it was very strong. She had waited a long time to say that. Princess Anne had watched the palace try to forget Diana for a long time. She had seen them tell a version of history that was not true, but she had stayed quiet until the right moment. Now the moment was here. The sentence she said was like a door closing forever. The Queen's face did not fall apart, but you could see that she was hurt. Her jaw moved and her eyes looked away. She was in a room with a king who wouldn't help her and a princess who told her the truth. There was nothing left to do. No one could change the law. No one could change the past. Charles stayed by the window and did not move. He did not try to help his wife or stop his sister. His silence was his final answer. Princess Anne looked at the Queen for 2 more seconds. Then she turned around and walked out of the room. Her footsteps were very steady. She was not in a hurry. She was done. The room was quiet again. Down the hall, the painting was still there. The light from the sun was hitting it now. It looked even more beautiful in the daylight. A young worker named Sol was cleaning the hall. She stopped and looked at the painting. She had been there for 20 minutes. It made her feel like she wanted to cry, but she didn't know why. Another worker named Zara came by. Zara had worked there for a long time. She just nodded. "She looks like she belongs there," Zara said. Sol looked at the painting again. "She does," she replied. "She really does." 3 floors up, a man named Marcus was writing a note about the painting. He didn't know how to start it. Every time he wrote a sentence, he deleted it. He didn't want it to sound like a fake palace announcement. In the end, he just wrote the facts. He said the painting was on the wall because of a legal filing. He said it was permanent and valid. Then he sent the note and closed his computer. He felt like the palace was a cleaner place now. Outside, a car drove away. It was the Queen's helper. She was on the phone, talking quietly. She didn't look at the hall where the painting was. She already knew it was there. Everyone would know soon. And somewhere in the palace, in a quiet room, Prince William was sitting in a chair. William was all alone. His hands were resting on his knees. He felt the weight on his shoulders go away. For 20 years, he had been carrying a lot of sadness and anger. But now he had finally done something to fix it. He had been a 15-year-old boy walking behind a coffin while the whole world watched. He had been told to be brave and keep his feelings inside. He had done what the palace asked of him for a long time. He was patient and he was smart. He had studied the rules until he found the right way to help his mother's memory. He didn't use a loud voice or a news story. He used a 17-page legal document. He was very precise. He had kept a promise to someone who was gone. Prince William went into the garden. His phone buzzed. It was a message from his lawyer, Desmond. It said, "The filing is stamped." That meant it was official. William read the message and put his phone in his pocket. He sat on an old stone bench. The morning was very quiet. He thought about that sad day in September many years ago. He thought about how he had to be so strong for everyone else. He had given the palace everything they wanted from him. He gave them his time and his smiles. But today he did something for himself and for his mother. He didn't feel like he had won a prize. He just felt like he had done what was right. The promise was kept. Inside the hall, the young worker Sol moved her cleaning cart. She looked at the painting one last time. She was only 23 years old, so she didn't remember Diana. But she saw a woman's face that looked very kind. She thought the light on the painting was very pretty. She thought the woman looked like she was finally home. The monarchy was different now. It didn't happen with a big noise. It happened slowly and quietly. You couldn't point to the exact second it changed, but you could see that it was different. You couldn't go back to the way things were before. William would go back inside and do his work. He had many meetings to go to. He would be the same prince he always was. But William would feel different inside. He wouldn't have to carry that heavy weight anymore. He had put the painting in the right place. Diana's portrait was on the wall to stay. It was there because her son was smart enough to use the rules to his advantage. He had been planning this for 20 years, and he finally did it. She was home. And now, the palace and the family would have to face the truth about the past. They would have to remember the woman they tried to forget. The story was not over, it was just beginning a new chapter. If this story made you feel something, please leave a comment. Tell us which part was your favorite. Was it when the king stayed silent or when the princess said those 5 words? Your voice is very important to us. Thank you for watching our story today.